Scattered throughout Alabama and our world as well, there are places that hold strange unknown powers and secrets. Some of us have been fortunate enough, or perhaps unfortunate enough, to encounter these places. They are mystical, magical, perhaps enchanted, and sometimes cursed. They are known as vortexes, portals, doorways, and passageways to other worlds and other dimensions, to times in the past, or to times in the future. For the most part, they lay hidden, lurking deep in the shadows. So ask yourself before you make this journey tonight, can I handle the truth? Or once you find the truth, your life is forever changed. You are now about to cross into the shadow regions, where reality and the supernatural mingle. Well, hello and welcome to this edition of Alabama Adventures. Tonight we're going to be doing another shadow regions. What are we going to be doing in the shadow regions? Well, we're going to be talking about ghosts. We're going to be talking about dogs. We're going to be talking about a ghost dog, which was one of my dogs, or is still one of my dogs as far as I'm concerned. A few videos back, if you remember, I mentioned a dog that I had named Bozo. Bozo was a German Shepherd. He wasn't a very big German Shepherd. He wasn't a real tall German Shepherd. As a matter of fact, whenever somebody gave him to my dad and he brought him home, that's what he told me, that Bozo, that's what he was going to call him. I'll tell you why in just a minute. But Bozo was the run of the litter, and they didn't want this dog and asked him if he did, and he said he sure would like to have him, so he brought Bozo home. And let me tell you a little bit about what Bozo looked like the first time that I saw him. Bozo just looked like a big ball of fur. He was about 6 weeks old. He was pretty fat. He'd been well taken care of, it looked like, and fed from wherever he came from, but his hair just stuck straight out. He kind of reminded you of a possum, the way that his hair just stuck out from his body. But over time, he grew normal fur like a dog has, and he turned out to be a very nice looking dog, and I was very proud of him. And he was with me for several years until one afternoon. Let me tell you a little bit about what happened on the afternoon that Bozo died. And if in this video, if I have to stop every once in a while and pause the camera and wipe a tear, you may just have to put up with that. Alright, but now before we get on into the story that much deeper, let me back up just a little bit. I left this little part out, and I'm going to add it right now, about why my dad wanted to call Bozo Bozo. As I said earlier, when I first saw him, his hair stuck out like a possum, and that's why my dad said he wanted to call him Bozo, or he was going to call him Bozo. It was because his hair stuck straight out from his body, just like Bozo the Clown. So that's where Bozo got his name. So anyway, on this particular night, the first night that I met Bozo, he had come to his new home from Pine Mountain, Georgia, was where he was originally born and where he was originally from. But anyway, he had come to his new home where he would spend the rest of his life, and unfortunately where he would die. After he come home that night, we kept him in the house for a little while, and he roamed the house looking around and smelling and seeing what all he could find, like all dogs always do. And I went down to the local grocery store, and I got a large cardboard box. That was going to be his bed and where he would sleep at night in our house to begin with. That's always the way we done when we got a new dog like this. We always brought it in and fed it and sort of got it used to us and used to its surroundings and everything. But anyway, over a period of time, I began taking him out on his leash and let him walk in the yard, and I'd bring him back in the house, and me and him would play some and this type of stuff. But one thing about Bozo, and I'll get to that in just a minute. I just keep that in mind that there was one thing about Bozo. After we kept him for a few days and he had gotten used to us, I began to turn him outside and take him off his leash and let him run. Bozo was hard to catch. Bozo was the kind of dog that did not like to be touched. And I don't know what that was, but for a long time he was hard to catch when we would turn him off a leash. And we all worried about him getting run over and maybe getting out in the road. But he never did. He would always make a circle around the house, maybe out in the yard a few times. And a lot of times he wouldn't let you catch him, but if you opened the door and called him in, of course he knew where his food bowl and water bowl was, I guess. So he'd come on in the house, and then once again you could pet him. But he just didn't particularly like to be touched to begin with until one day. He was done probably about a year old. And all this time, from the time that we first got him up till he was about a year old, he did not like you to touch him. He did not want you to hold him. He would not jump up in your lap. He wouldn't jump up on the, sometimes he would jump up on the side and you could pet him on the head and then he'd take off running, making his big circle out in the yard and that type of stuff. But he just did not like to be touched. Now, whether there was something wrong with him that it actually hurt him when you touched him or something, there may be dogs like some people. I know some people have, I believe it's called fibromyalgia or something like that, and it hurts sometimes whenever you touch people like that. I do know that. And it could possibly be that a dog has something similar. One day I had been out in the shop doing some work, I don't know, sharpening a lawnmower blade or doing something out there, and when I came walking out of the shop around the side of the house, Bozo was sound asleep on the top step. That's what went through my mind. Just walk up to him and catch him and grab him and make him let you pet him for a little while. So I creeped up on Bozo just as quietly as I could, and I guess he'd been out chasing rabbits or deers or doing something. He was tired because he was really sleeping on that top step. And I got up close enough to him and I reached down and I grabbed him. And whenever I grabbed him, I thought he was going to eat me up. He never did bite me. He acted like he would a time or two. He would actually take his mouth and kind of get a hold of your arm a little bit and sort of shake it a little bit, but he never bit hard or anything like that. And the whole time I was talking to him, trying to calm him down, which I did, and we, I guess, wrestled around for several minutes, me trying to hold this German Shepherd, and he not wanting to be held, but I did hold him and pet him on the head, and after a little bit he calmed down, and I finally turned him loose, and after that, Bozo would let you pet him. He would come to you. He would, when you'd be sitting in a chair, he'd come rear up on the chair, sometimes want to sit in your lap. After I made him let me pet him for a while, I guess he saw that it was okay and that I wasn't going to hurt him or anything. So then he would let all of us, my parents and me as well, pet him anytime we got ready. You could walk outside and call his name, and he'd come walking up, wagging his tail. You could pet him on the back or on the head. But that was one thing that was about Bozo. When he was young, up to about a year old, he did not like to be touched at all. Back when I lived at home, and at one time I probably had about 25 dogs, and Bozo was one of them at that time. But Bozo and some of the rest of them usually got a bath about once a week, whether they needed it or not. And that's what I had done with some of them this particular afternoon. I had give them a bath, and that was a job, giving dogs a bath all afternoon long. The main reason I gave Bozo a bath was he'd got up in the woods chasing a rabbit or a deer or something up in there, and he'd got on some ticks. And back in those days, about all you could do for fleas and ticks was powder. They had powder and a spray that you could put on, but it didn't do a whole lot of good. They didn't have the medicine like they have now. I've heard that they have shots for fleas. I do know they have pills that dogs can take for fleas and that type of stuff. That's what I had done. I had give Bozo a good bath, and it pulled all the ticks off of him, because that's the only way we used to get rid of them back whenever I was younger. And I know some of you out there has probably done the same thing to your dogs. I had just got through doing that with Bozo, and I had got him dried off up on the porch and had turned him loose. And he was running in the yard. He felt good. I guess he just had a bath. And all the ticks and fleas were off of him. And he was running, and some of the rest of them were playing. And as he made a big loop, he ran into the road. And, of course, just at that time, somebody has to be coming down the road and run over him and killed him. Of course, it killed him instantly, in which I was glad that if he did have to die that afternoon, that he died quickly and painlessly as possible. We got him up and carried him down to a little place in the yard where I had some other dogs over the years that had died, and put him in our little pet cemetery, I guess. Got to pause. Okay, now while I had the camera there paused, and I was thinking about Bozo and what all happened that day and about when it was, I can remember now exactly the year that it was. It was in the fall, but the year was 1977 whenever Bozo died. The reason I remember that was the same year that I got married, so I don't know, 77 wasn't a very good year, but anyway, I can remember that because I remember the night that we buried him and everything and came on home. What I need to tell you now is whenever Bozo came back to me, and I believe saved my life, this would have been around 1981, so I guess that was about 4 years later. Bozo was still around. He was still keeping an eye on me, because that was what his purpose in life was. He was a yard dog. He was a watchdog, and I guess he was still doing it 4 years after he died. Pause it again. So now as we inch our way along in this video, as I always like to say, from the tail end of the Appalachian Mountain Chain in the heart of the South, this is Alabama Adventures, and you are in the shadow regions. Okay, so now we're getting back to the story, and I went and got a roll of paper towels. So we're probably going to have them tonight. I know you probably say, why are you so close and so emotional when it comes to animals? Well, I just always have been that way. Animals are a whole lot better than a lot of humans, than most humans, let me put it like that. Humans that you trust and put confidence in. Animals will not betray that trust that you put in them. Animals love you for what you are, for who you are. They don't judge you. They don't try to embarrass you. They don't try to ridicule you and that type of stuff. No matter what you may think or what you may do, animals only ask that you love them back. And it's very sad that a lot of people aren't like that. Anyway, if you watch my videos, you already know. I know I've mentioned it in some back videos that me and a real good friend of mine weekly used to go to Columbus, Georgia to watch wrestling. And that's where we were headed this particular afternoon. We had left our house and we were headed down Highway 431 toward Auburn, Opelika. You get to Auburn, Opelika down there, then you turn on 280, and that carries you right into Columbus, Georgia, right by the Municipal Auditorium, and that's where they had wrestling every Wednesday night. And that's where we were headed on this particular day. And it was around, I'm going to say, about 4:30, maybe going on toward 5 o'clock. But anyway, it was right after 4:30, because I remember looking at the clock in the car as we went through Lafayette, Alabama. And I know that's supposed to be pronounced Lafayette, but most of us around here just call it Fett. But anyway, we'll leave it out those unnecessary syllables. But anyway, we had gone through Lafayette and we were headed toward Tiger Corner, 9 miles south of Lafayette, because that's what's on the sign. And anyway, as you come up on Tiger Corner, you will come to the intersection of 147 is what I believe it is. Here's a picture. You will come to Alabama Highway 147, and right there in that corner of 431 and 147 is this gas station, convenience store, restaurant, Tiger Corner. And here's a picture of the front of Tiger Corner. Whenever you turn on to 147, this is what you'll see. Okay, now in the days when this encounter happened, it was in the early 1980s. And the store, I don't know if the store owned the nursery that was behind Tiger Corner store there, or if someone else owned this nursery, but there was a very large nursery. As if you look to the right side of the store, as we're looking at this picture, you can see a large pasture back there. And in those days, it was covered all over with all types of trees and plants and flowers and this type of stuff, potted mostly. And if you will look right here to this side of the store, you can see there are some out there now, or the other day when I went down there and we made these photographs. But anyway, that just kind of gives you an idea. What you see there on the right side was covered completely over that pasture in those days. There was all kind of plants, as I said, right there. And now if you will also look to the right side of the store, there where 431 comes into that curve, and here I'll show you a close-up of that curve. That's where our encounter happened, right there in that curve. Anyway, I'm not going to use my friend's real name in this story. I'm going to use Wayne, is who I call him. I've got a lot on my mind tonight, lots going on, and then doing this story about one of my favorite old dogs, Bozo. But anyway, what had happened, as I said earlier, we're coming south on 431, headed toward Auburn, Opelika. And as we come into this curve, I did not notice that they were cutting pulpwood and cutting down trees along the edge of the road as we came down through here about 55 or 60 miles an hour that afternoon. What happened as we came into this curve, this dog just comes running out of the woods from over there on the right side as you look at the picture of the curve. The dog just came running out of the woods at full speed. He just came right into the road, and I swerved to miss him. I didn't hardly have time to hit the brakes yet, so I just cut the wheel as quickly as I could to miss him. And when I did, I ran off the road, and that's when we got into the grass and the gravel over there. And whenever I did apply the brakes, I guess I applied them too hard, the car spun completely all the way around. But this dog was coming across the road, and I was trying my best to miss him. In the meantime, as the dog comes across the road and the car slides off the pavement and into the ditch, headed into the plants and all the other trees that are in the nursery out there, is where we were headed. As I said, the car began to get away from me, and it began to spin around. His car began to spin around. I'm not sure how many times that it spun completely around, but as we neared where the dog ran across the road, I was already off the pavement. But this large tree, this large oak tree, fell into the Highway 431. And the thing about it is, I saw it whenever it began to come down. And as I said, I was already off the road, but this tree came all the way across the road. It was a very large, very tall oak tree. I guess it had gotten away from the people that were cutting it. The wind might have got in it and blown it a different way than what they intended to cut it. I know they did not intend to cut the tree down to where it would fall across Highway 431, a very, very busy road here in Alabama. As I slid by the tree, the car had not begun to spin. And if I had not come off the road, this tree would have fell exactly on top of the front seat of this car. Well, it would have hit the roof, but it would have came down on top of me and Wayne, who was in the car with me that afternoon, and it would have very possibly killed both of us. And as you're going down the road, say about 60 miles an hour, and this tree almost hits you, as a matter of fact, the very top of the tree actually, from the best I remember, hit the side of the car, because I remember that sound of the leaves brushing the metal and hitting it pretty hard. If we had been in either of the lanes, as I said, the tree would have fell right in the smack dab middle of the roof of this car and would have very possibly killed both of us. But because this dog had come running out into the road and I had swerved to miss him, I feel like that saved our life. Finally, the car came to a stop over there in the grass, and we had not gotten into the plants that were in the nursery yet. We did get the car stopped, or I did. We got the car stopped. And then he and I were yelling at each other. Were we okay? What happened? We were we were pretty much in shock too. Anyway, we kind of composed ourselves and we got out of the car. We were going to look at it to see if any of the glass was broken or any dents or what we could see and everything. And of course, these people that had been cutting the tree, the loggers or pulpwooders back in those days, is what it was. They were actually cutting pulpwood. They a couple of them come running across the road to make sure we were okay and apologizing, and it was just one of those little freak accidents that happened. As I stood there, that's what I told Wayne. I said, "Where did that dog go? What happened to that dog?" And this is a very wide pasture, and the dog did not have time to cross the pasture from the time that we got stopped and got out of the car, because we were opening the doors and getting out of the car before it come to a complete stop. We were just that frightened and scared, and well, we felt like we had almost gotten killed that afternoon. And this pasture extends a lot. It's a lot bigger pasture than what it looks like in these photographs here. But we looked and looked for that dog. I even remember we both called the dog, whistled for it, and to see if we could get it maybe to stop or throw its head up or something to where we could see it. I actually wanted this dog. This dog I felt like had just saved my life. But as in just a little bit after we sort of calmed down and got our nerves back and everything, we got back in the car and we headed on to wrestling that afternoon. I believe we went in Tiger Corner down there and got us a little something to drink right quick and eat, because that was pretty much an unnerving experience right there. After we left and we went on down the road a little ways, that's what I told Wayne. I said, that dog looked exactly like Bozo. And we got to thinking about it, and he and I got to talking, and that's who we believed the dog was. The dog completely disappeared across this pasture. He did not have time to run across this pasture from the time that he darted into the road, and I swerved over, and we got out of the car. We never saw the dog again. We only saw him as he was coming across the road at the car. And as I said, I hit the brakes, swerved off the road, began spinning. I think I spun around about twice out there in that grass and everything. But we even asked the pupwooders in there, was that their dog, or had they seen a dog? And they had not seen a dog out there all day. They had said they'd been cutting there pretty much 3 or 4 days, cutting pulpwood in there. And they had not seen a German Shepherd dog. But anyway, I will always believe that was Bozo keeping an eye on me and still doing his job of protecting me around 4 years after he had died. Okay, now after our little encounter had somewhat ended, and we got back in the car and drove on down just a little ways to the Tiger Corner store there. We did go in, get us a little something to drink, a little something to eat, and I asked some people in there if they were familiar with this dog. Did they own this dog, or was this dog some neighbor dog or something like that? And all the people that I talked to in there, no one had ever seen or heard of anybody in that area having a German Shepherd dog. So anyway, that also makes me think that this dog was Bozo. Now, as it seems as I always have to do when I'm doing these videos, there's a little detail that I leave out and I have to go back and catch it. And that's what I'm going to do now. But this little detail was at the very end of the story that afternoon. This tree I was telling you about that had fallen across 431 was so large they couldn't pull the whole tree out of the road at one time. They had to actually cut limbs off of the tree, cut it up. They did have to block traffic on 431 for a pretty good little while until the pulpwood crew could manage to get it cut up, get it hooked to a tractor, and piece by piece pulled out of the road. So if this large tree had fallen across the top of the car, no doubt we would have both been killed that afternoon. And as I bring this video on to a close, I have another little something I want to tell you about a very good friend of mine up in Decatur, Alabama. Her name's Paula. I won't give her last name, but she'll certainly know who she is whenever she hears her name, and she's from Decatur. Paula contacted me a while back. I had done the other little ghost dog story about Marengo County, if you remember, a few months ago. And Paula contacted me and asked me had I ever seen a Twilight Zone episode called The Hunt, in which I had. It had been several years since I had seen it. So anyway, she emailed me, and then she and I talked back and forth on the phone. After I got the email, I wanted to call her back. She wanted me to watch The Hunt because she said that the leading character, the guy and the dog in this particular Twilight Zone episode, kind of reminded her of me and Chico. And I went back and watched it, and it kind of does. And I just wanted to give her credit for the closing now that I do, is where I say Chico and I will see you on down the road. If you watch that episode of the Twilight Zone, which was, let me add this about that particular episode. It was in the Appalachian Mountains setting is where this episode originated or came from. And if you remember the Waltons that used to come on, I believe back in the 1970s is when they came on. The man who came up, created it and done a lot of writing, that's where some of his memories from childhood actually made these episodes on TV. Earl Hamner was his name. He's the man that actually wrote this The Hunt episode of the Twilight Zone, and I wondered if this was just an old folklore tale or if he made it up or if it was true from the West Virginia Appalachian Mountains. Anyway, just something I wanted to add and I wanted you to think about. But anyway, where our closing now comes out from, where I say Chico and I will see you on down the road, was from the tail end of The Hunt. If you will notice, this man who's Mr. Simpson, I believe is his name, and his dog is named Rip. And they both get killed. I won't tell the whole story because I want you to go watch this episode of The Twilight Zone when you have time. They both get killed at the same time, and they both go to heaven. And they kind of try to, the devil tries to kind of to deceive them after they arrive in the afterlife. But one of the angels in the latter part tells Mr. Simpson and Rip that a man will walk into hell with both eyes wide open, but even the devil can't fool a dog. And that's exactly right. And if you will notice, then they go to walking on down Eternity Road, I believe is what it was called, on their way into heaven. And I hope someday that that's what Chico and I will do. But anyway, I guess I need to bring this video on to a close. And so, as I do, I want to close it in Rod Serling Twilight Zone style. And I will try my best to do that right now. And as Rod Serling might say at the end of the show, is there a special place where special dogs go when they leave this earthly world? Are they allowed to continue their faithful love of their previous owner, to still watch and protect them, even after their death? Are dogs constantly riding the clouds, keeping a sharp eye out for danger approaching their loved ones and their owners? In the case of Bozo, what other explanation could there be? And if sometime you find yourself walking alone through the shadow regions and get an uneasy feeling as if danger lurks close by, just call to my old friend Bozo. Now, he may not let you pet him until he really gets to know you, but he'll come around. Just be sure to tell him you know me. And now, I guess with all that being said, as I always do, I'll say hello to my granddaughter Madison. I'd also like to say hello to all my dogs who have passed on and are probably still watching over me. And I don't know what I'd do if they didn't. I know I get into some heck of a messes sometimes, and maybe they help pull me out. But anyway, if you like this video, I hope you give us a like. And if you like what we're doing down here, I hope you subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. All you got to do is click the subscribe button. If you're in a position to where you can and where you would like to make a donation to help us finance these videos and what we do down here, that would be very much appreciated. All you have to do is to go to alabamabigfootsociety.com, and I'll put a link in the box below to where you can go there. And on the front page of the website, you'll find a place to where you can make that donation. And as I said, and I'll say it again, it would be very much appreciated, and I'll thank you in advance. I guess with all that being said, I'll be looking for you next time on the next Alabama adventure, and we'll either be in the shadow regions or we'll be roaming rural Alabama. But wherever we're at, Chico and I will see you on down the road.